So, welcome to the 13 Roses in our series of sacred sexuality and interviews with some amazing women who have been on the 13 Roses Rediscovering Your Sacred Sexual Self teacher training. And we're joined today by an absolutely magical woman called Dana. And Dana is not only a participant in the teacher training, which is a 13-month-long course, she's also participated on a solo journey for her own personal healing in the full 13 Roses course before. So we're talking to someone who's deeply dedicated into healing her sacred sexual self. So I'm just going to ask Dana, to give us an overview of who she is and how she come to the work. So lovely to have you on, Dana. And I'm just going to ask you just to give like a short introduction of who you are, what you do for a living, and how you came to the work.
I actually had a background in graphic design before I made a change and quit my job to move with family. And the move took me into a place that I found a place like with yoga. The lady just finished a teacher training course with Colette, and that's where my journey of soul work started.
Fantastic. And so you started with doing the yoga, the somatic movement and the emotional healing, and that just took you deeper inside your body on the search for your feminine power. I've seen it starting to come through in those courses and a deeper inquiry setting in. So when you've seen the 13 Roses and the rediscovering your sacred sexual self, what was your first and initial response to that?
To run away very fast.
And can you tell us why you felt that way?
Because I wanted to avoid anything of that topic. The only thing that made me do it was everyone that I've been doing different courses with Colette was saying this course is very much built for somebody like you. And I trusted all the work that I had got to that point to try it.
Yeah, I mean, I recognise that resistance straight away. It's something Dana knows from embodying yoga, and that when we get into the resistance point of any somatic movement, we're generally in the teaching, and the body's teaching us something, and we've got to listen and go in. We can't give up at that point, so to speak. So Dana was in recognition that there was something in her resistance to it that was actually calling her into the space to explore it. So for Dana, and my view on Dana was that there was this, taboo energy around sex and her own upbringing, and we all have our own story around sacred sexuality and sexuality and how it was sold to us or not sold or kept to us or told it was disgusting or whatever our experience is of it. And I could feel Dana in that resistance pushing it away, but I also felt the other pull in her to want to come in. So we're aware of the resistance, Dana. What was the pull in? What was it that made you go, I'm going to do this, I'm going to commit to this?
Just like my soul's knowing that there's something more here. So there's something deeper that I haven't discovered. And just knowing that there's another side of sex that's not dark, that's sacred and wholesome.
Yeah, beautiful. Beautiful. And that's for sure, like everything holds light and dark, and that pull in, she deeply committed. I mean, she's been very humble, people. She committed to a 9-month personal journey and then to a 13-month teacher training journey. And that takes some, commitment, devotion, and want to know your sacred self on a much deeper level than most people are taking in the world. So yeah, you will find that Dana is extremely humble. So if you were to tell people what the course involves and how, let's say the format is, what would you share about that? How do you see that the structure of it is being served?
With the teacher training that we're on now with
Yeah,
you?
yeah.
Um, it's very much now that you deliver course material, and we have to we sort of we it's self-paced. So there is a number of practices to get through, and my avoidance can make the day slip away very quickly. And but then there's always a drawing into, I know when I get into like a whirlingness that there's something more there for me. So when I can sit in that space, like it's very transformative.
Yeah, and we all have that, don't we? Like the course calls you to be devotional, which is part of women's, sacred sexuality, and meeting that resistance every day, as you so beautifully explained.
Yes, and there's sometimes like the way my body responds is before my mind actually catches on to something's happening. So it's just, I've been giving more space to sit with my practice more of the morning, because sometimes it could take me into the evening or the night before I got to it, or the avoidance sort of one. Um, but it's just very beautiful to be held in a space with other women walking through this journey as well.
Yeah, so the practices and the self devotion are key so that the PDF is delivered in the group and it contains many practices for that specific heat space of healing, whether that was the breasts or the cervix or the yoni walls or the womb, whatever subject we're in. There's the PDF that they get to do as a practice. And I also deliver a transmission that is at the beginning of that call at that month, and then they get to do an hour Q&A as a group of women with me. So how would you explain the transmissions, Dana? How do they work for you?
They're very deep. Um, I also I have a way where when something's mm, really speaking to you, I can get a little bit sleepy in that space. So sometimes I've done the transmission again. Um, the they're very moving. They speak on an unconscious level, sort of awakening up that part of
Yeah, and
myself.
you're right. Like we get into a deep meditative space with the transmission, so it can kind of it's more like an not an out of body, it's an in body experience, but it's
Yeah,
very spiritual.
yeah, and there could be different things, just different sensations in the body, or just more clarity
Mhm.
afterwards. They're a bit of a mixture with what happens, but they're always very potent in that space.
Very difficult to describe to people unless they've experienced what psychoactivity
Yeah, it's
is.
definitely something to experience. It's too hard to sort of express in words.
And then we form like a Q&A at the end of the month where we get to like share, I probe you all a little bit further and you get to share how you're feeling and your experiences and what's coming up for you. What's it like to be with the other women in those kind of sessions?
Yeah, they're great. They're great. I in the starting I was hiding a lot more, but it's nice to be feeling more comfortable with myself. Um, and just using like real life examples that's coming up in the course. So we're really learning how to help other women as we see examples and what we're feeling and what's happening. The Q and A's are always really potent with what it brings up, and other little lessons of like, yeah, with helping others.
Yeah, it is. It's really lovely to observe you all in that space, like supporting each other and sharing what's coming up for you, and really being empathetic to everybody's different experiences and stories. And that's the same in the forum because, of course, the forum, for those of you that don't know, is held in a secret space, and every day they post what's coming up for them from doing the practices that they're given. And what does it feel like, Dana, to be witnessed very, very intimately in all your shadow, all your light, with all the things you've hidden away from everybody? Can you explain how cathartic that is to experience that level of intimacy with a group of women sharing the ins and outs of yourself?
it's really interesting because in the beginning I did my post where I really just more uh, directed my post towards just Colette, not really wanting to be seen by everyone, but also wanting to be seen. And then I now feel like that there is a group of us. I feel that more strongly, and how it is to be witnessed is it's transformative, really, to be held in, to be loved, seen, held in all parts of us.
I know,
It's
and you,
not something.
yeah,
It's not
you've got
something
a
you
lot of
get. Yeah.
experience there, haven't you? You've got a lot of experience now doing that.
Pardon?
You have a lot of experience now doing that, being exposed in a group situation because you've been in many containers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
And
I just wanted at this point to just go back. Like, can you remember what it was like when you? Because I'm in a group at the minute with my own work, and these are all new to sharing in a group situation, and it can be very intimidating. Can you remember those earlier days of coming into this kind of work and sharing very intimate details about yourself?
yep. When more intimate stuff is not seen straight away, I want to delete it. I just want to take it. I want to just erase everything I had said.
Mm-hmm.
It makes me feel very uncomfortable in that space. But then when it is seen and witnessed and supported, oh, it's like you can like just take off so much weight that I put on myself, pressure, punishment. Um, Also feel very normal. I think that's a big one where there's many people with different experiences and different everyone's come from a different experience, but there's so much similarities in emotional space where we can relate to one another, but sort of sometimes come from a different place.
Yeah, I mean, I really want to pick up on word keywords that you said there, like being vulnerable. It was hard for me to be vulnerable, and finally, when I got this space, when I was in containers, to allow that vulnerability and expose myself. And you said the word normal, and that really struck me. You know, to be normal in all that stuff that I'd hidden because I didn't think I was normal, and then when I started to
Mm-hmm.
see other women doing it, I was like, oh, they mess up too, or they can be a bitch too, or they've made mistakes. It was really, really helpful. It allowed me to accept myself more. And you just hit it when you said the weight comes off. And I do experience that and see that in the containers, that people like shed their loads in those groups. They take off the backpacks full of all that they've been carrying around and leave it in there. And it really is freeing. I mean, can you explain? I mean, you don't have to give us intimate details, but of something that you might have shared that you'd been holding back and what it felt like to put it in the group and be free of it.
It felt like I could breathe again. It's like a new lease on life, and it just stops. It stops, like taking opportunities, really, depending on what it is. It can really hold us back, like hold me back, my the parts I see of myself.
Yeah, thank you. I definitely witnessed that in you happening. What do you feel that in what areas do you feel like you've grown during the 13 roses? What's the biggest areas of growth that you see in yourself?
Well, from the first course, I thought that I would be a cat lady. I didn't think that I'd ever be able to have a relationship. So to journey through the second course in having a relationship, and just starting to see what feel and embody parts of the course, and being able to, well, take what I could in. This also depends on who you meet, and realizing that relationship wasn't serving me. It's been just such a massive growth in myself, and understanding myself more, and learning my needs and wants, and in understanding more of myself, I don't crave these places from other people. I think that's been the biggest thing, is like self-validation, and honoring all my feelings.
Beautiful. And I can bear witness to Dana's massive, transformation. She is someone who runs with things. Like we said from the first course, Dana was not and had not been in a long-term relationship and had kind of condemned herself to being the cat lady. And then from healing parts of her self with the masculine was able to fully want and embrace a relationship. And when that relationship wasn't bearing the fruits that she'd hoped, she was also able to let it go. So wow, do you even recognize that in yourself, Dana, that like 3 point turn that you've done while doing this course? And yeah, and that's a testament to the work that you're moving through, constantly negating yourself and where you're blocking yourself. And you've done exactly that. And obviously the relationship part for you has been very big in this situation, in this group. What about the relationship with yourself? How's that changed?
Just being like learning to be my friend and putting my needs first and wants and desires. That's been a really big thing. Not realizing that I've actually been abusing myself in neglecting myself and not nurturing myself in the places that I need to. Being more like coming out of that child sort of state and coming more into that mother space, the space where I'm now just excited for a relationship, or the right relationship, being able to embody everything that I've learned. But it's also, it's okay to want what I want.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's okay to want what I want, because you were such a people pleaser before, Dana. That's the truth, isn't it? You were in
Yeah.
cycles of pleasing everyone else and really neglecting yourself. So you've had the opportunity and you've taken it with both hands to say, I'm actually worthy of nurturing. You said the word nurturing and taking care of myself. Can you give us an example of the places that you haven't been nurturing and loving of yourself? Give us some examples, because I'm quite sure the people who listen to this are finding themselves in similar cycles.
It little things with just even like busying myself with becoming like more of a workaholic and not giving myself enough time to just stop. Doing the little things that bring me joy. I never did any sort of self-love, uh, anything from, I've got a brush that does lymphatic, like any sort of like, sort of beauty regime, or like any sort of massage oils or anything like this, to also how much I feed myself and not feeding myself enough.
Yeah, yeah, and you've been working really hard on changing that and spending more loving, nurturing time on you, because you realize that that's like foundational, and that the love of yourself and your sacred sexuality is that, that energy sent out and it's received, isn't it, and met and brought back to you. So that's really important. I really want to speak on the part that you mentioned about coming out of the child archetype, because obviously I work with Jungian psychology and the child and the inner child, and how that has manifested for you in your life, and embracing the woman in you, which has been big part of the healing for you in the 13 roses. Can you say something on that? What was the wrangle? What was the struggle? What was happening with you in your childlike energy that was keeping you from the mother energy and what woman calls in?
I've I've been kept young, and I've also allowed myself to be kept young by my mom, and I didn't even really realize that this child dynamic was really ruling my life. Um, I work as a support worker and I teach yoga. I work with kids, so then there is a mothering within me, but I've never mothered and nurtured myself so much. I kind of wanted others and expected others to do that for me. So there's this balance in feeling these places. And then when it comes to the sacred sexuality, is like understanding what that is to be like in regards of being a woman and not having that child taboo like gross darkness about it, but it's actually the closest you can get to somebody, and even knowing your own self. So it's been a very big change in that dynamic, and I feel stronger in myself as a result as well.
Yeah, I see and feel that in you, that woman coming through, leaving, nurturing, bringing the child with her as part of her, but being the mother to her own self. And that's been incredible watching you go through that process. I think it's very important as well to understand that these patterns are not conscious. You know, Dana was not aware that there was many childlike qualities in her and that people were treating her as a child. And when she became conscious of that in the group and the work that we were doing, she was able to say, wow, I hadn't even realized that that was happening, and I want to change that. And she did the work, she changed that. She began to change from being the child to the woman herself by understanding the psychology, the psyche, the childlike behavior in her, and made a movement into the woman, and is still doing that now. So that's the beauty of the container, in that we allow each other to see what's not conscious. We are speaking up as women to one another, saying that's very childlike. You know, where's the woman in you? Constantly trying to empower one another. So, you know, we speak about it a lot, don't we, Dana, in the group? Like, what is not conscious in us? What are we not seeing about ourselves? So, you being aware that there is so much unconscious behavior that we work on a daily basis to bring into consciousness, how has that changed your life and your understanding of other people?
Oh, it's been huge, especially when you share a place with people as well, like in a share house.
Yeah.
Um, and I can see how much I've been anxious and nervous and not, and like walking on eggshells, to being more confident in my own space. Um, and then to different types of work, also really valuing myself more. And it's just, it's massively changed everything. I just feel more confident, like I've got my own back, as opposed to like needing somebody's help.
Yeah, yeah. And it helps us, doesn't it, understand that behaviours from other people are not necessarily intentional, but can also be deeply unconscious, that they're in patterns of unconscious behaviour that makes them play out or behave in a certain way. Does that help you understand them a little bit more and make it a bit more relatable?
Oh yeah, and it just makes me feel more comfortable that it's not my fault. I grew up with a feeling that everything was my fault, so sometimes it's just what's going on in their thing, and I project that they're thinking this about me, and that's just not true. It's just a story that I'm making up. So I can, instead of running away from my problems, I'm facing them now. I think that's been the biggest thing.
Yeah, beautiful. And that is a another big transformation. And it's amazing, isn't it, when we start to talk about these things, you realise actually the work you've done on yourself and what you've changed. But I've definitely seen that in you, that you're no longer just hiding from it, but you're facing it and saying, okay, this is something that is challenging me, that needs changing. And if I do that, I'm going to get a new opportunity, a new lease of life, or a new energy is going to come in the door. So that speaks to us all, isn't it? And we really find things challenging to face. What have you learnt by facing these things in your sacred sexual body? What's been the biggest learning about your sexuality? Let's turn it back to sexuality.
The biggest thing is probably being feeling safe in my own company, like safe in myself, and
And safe
learning
in
to.
sex, safe in
Pardon?
and safe in your woman's sexual body, the things that
Yes,
happen
that's
in
been
your sexual body.
that's a big thing, because I dress down and I don't like attention in that space. But it's nice to dress in a way that I want to dress for me, and feel safe in that space. And yeah, and then that just runs into everything. because that, like how you teach us, that sex is like how it's expressive in life as well. If we dull down that part of ourselves, we're stopping ourselves from like living life, like really creating, exploring, like feeling life.
Yeah, beautiful. And what about facing the things like the yoni egg practices, the self-pleasuring practices, the practices that ask us to work with our bodies physically in a more sacred way? So, we know that in the group, some of these things and requirements. We've got a whole range of women in the group, women that have explored all of those tools and ways before in different tantric groups, and then we've got women who've never even tried any of it. So how do you feel it's different when we do it in a sacred way? What comes through with the sexuality do you see in the group when it's done and held in a sacred container?
It's very loving in that space. It's nurturing. Um, because sex itself is very lustful, but like love making or this like self pleasure, it's a nurturing type space.
Yeah.
It's more wholesome.
And how has that changed your outlook on, say, the jade egg practice or the self pleasuring practice? How has it changed your view on those things?
Personally, I still have like a bit of avoidance, but at the same time, I'm becoming more comfortable in that space. And when we can give ourselves what we need, we don't like seek that outside in like unwholesome ways, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, yeah. And I just want to highlight here that, you know, Dana came to the group not as someone who is bursting with tantric experience or wanting to do like the practices and going, yeah, I can't wait to do this. Dana has a massive resistance to a lot of the practices because she holds such an air of taboo around sex because of your own upbringing and the way it was like brought to you and your own experience in the world. So it's been really beautiful to work with someone like Dana who isn't coming at it saying, I want to fully explore my sexuality, but comes into the group with resistance to it because this is what we've discussed before, isn't it, Dana? That Dana holds a key piece to working with people who hold resistance, who are timid, who have experience of the taboo of sex, who feel that, sexual experience isn't their experience. So I want you to say a little bit more on that because it leads us to the ultimate question that I wanted to ask you is what are you going to do with this training? So let's speak on that taboo, that restriction, that projection on sex as something we shouldn't do, or I'm not an outrageously wild sexual woman, but the course has been a space where you can come in and begin to discover that. So how do you plan to use this training?
Well, it's the exact reason why I'm on the training, because I had resistance to being on the teacher training as well. But with what the first 13 Roses brought me, I was like, women need to experience this. Like someone needs to teach women about this. Otherwise, I don't know how I would have come to where I am now. So like there was just such a fear of sex. I can't really explain it, but my whole body would lock up. Yeah. And to be able to to be on this course with all the other women, but to now be to actually have had a relationship and want to get closer to somebody. I've never experienced that. Want to be closer to somebody in a way that is sacred. And the course teaches me more about myself, so we do need to start with understanding ourselves. So I definitely would love to teach women or help women like face their own fears around intimacy, relationships, in the fear of sex.
Beautiful, yeah. And I really feel that niche for you, and that, you know, working with the taboos of it and the resistance to it. I think it's your story is so beautiful because it's unique. Like every other women in the group have a unique experience and story and trauma. Let's not forget there's often trauma involved with our sexual experiences or lack of sexual experiences, for example. So it's so beautiful to host a group of women with such varied experiences and to try and like bring out the best in all of those colours of women, and each woman having a gift to share with a certain niche. So if we were to highlight the niche of women that you will be looking to work with, how would you explain the niche that you want to work with?
Um, I think any woman that has just a, like it has been in a taboo, like that sex is taboo,
Mm.
like sex is dark, like just that fear. Anyone that has that anxiety around it, nervousness, just doesn't really know where to start. I'd love to work with somebody like that,
Yeah, I think that would
um,
be absolutely
because I
perfect.
understand.
Yeah, it's embodied. You've embodied it. It's your journey, and you can teach better when we've like experienced it and lived it and healed it and worked through it and come out the other end, which is what you're doing. And just lastly, the part that Dana is, you know, very, very passionate about is working with children, and in some way she would love to eventually bring this sacred sexuality piece into her work with children. She's not quite sure on how that will happen yet, but that definitely is an opening for you, isn't it, Dana?
Yes, if we can understand like the wholesomeness uh and what it is, but to experience like what you've been teaching in the course, I think it's really good now, like is like to have a childhood, and then when we're ready for relationships and that responsibility, but to understand the beauty of it, but not rush that space.
Yeah, yeah, that's been a big point on our course at the moment about, you know, protecting children in sexuality and educating them and speaking about it as a sacred, sexual, beautiful, wonderful act, but to enjoy childhood first. So
Yes.
that is something I look forward to seeing Dana bringing into the world. I mean, these are the things that are going to change our society. So thank you very much, Dana, for that candid, you know, interview, talking about a subject that it was so difficult for you like a couple of years ago that you're now, you know, working with and being interviewed about. So I just want to take a deep bow to you in your journey and the bravery and the devotion and the dedication that you have given to this course, the 13 Roses. And I just would like to say for anyone who resonates with Dana's experience and what Dana's gift is in the world in reaching those women with, you know, limited experience with their own sexuality, with being stuck in maybe their childhood, wanting to explore the taboo that they hold around sex, then Dana is your woman. And you will find that I will leave her details, her contact details, under this video with links to how you can get hold of Dana should you want to work with her. So thank you, Dana. I really appreciate you spending time with us to share your experience with the audiences that will listen to this.
Well, thank you so much for your time and love and continuous support, Colette.
Lots of love. Bye for now.